All right, welcome to the Magnetically Aligned Woman. Walk into your power through self love, self worth, and authenticity. Today, I have Lois Wagner. She's your friend for forgiveness. She's an accomplished speaker, storyteller, mentor, inspirer. She's a learning and training facilitator and empowering coach through her program using the acronym SMILE. She will move you from victim through survivor to thriver and beyond to freedom after facing a life or business challenge or adversity. Lois is based in Johannesburg, South Africa. She will be sharing events and lessons from her own story, moving her through fear into forgiveness to freedom using resilience, grit, a growth mindset, and be prepared, lower your guard, and open your heart to change as we welcome Lois to share her smile with us as she takes you on this journey of healing. I am so excited to have you, Lois. Welcome.
Thank you, Nikki. It's so great to be here.
Uh, First and foremost, like the first thing that comes to mind, and I always love to ask is, can you give us a little bit more about your personal background and how you got to doing what you do today?
Have you got a couple of hours?
Can you condense it?
Okay, so I say that the M in smile is mentoring because I've been around a long time and I've got a lot of life and business experience, and so I've got the wisdom that goes with it. So yeah, I started out in corporate world in marketing, and then I transgressed, that's the right word, into consulting. And then I started a printing business in partnership with somebody, a little digital printing business way back in the days before color printers were a thing. And I was working, I was working late one night and I was attacked, raped, and left for dead. And that's when my world changed completely. So I was always sort of a corporate business person. My business partner betrayed me, put the business into liquidation, and I went deep into debt. And so I had to go out and get a job again, went back into the corporate world. And finally, at age 64, I decided to do personal transformational coaching.
Wow, what an intense story. Um, Now, I know the topic you deeply focus on is forgiveness. Can you share a little bit about your experience with forgiveness and how that has allowed you to move forward in life?
Right, so I was raped back in 1996, and it was way before the Me Too movement. And I became an activist, wanted to change the world because this sort of thing shouldn't happen. And then I lost the passion for it, I suppose. And I'd lost the business, and I had to work and find a new career. And then I decided to leave South Africa and go and work in the Middle East for a while. And that was 13 years after the rape. And I was coming home. So 14 years later, I was coming home for my first holiday. And in the previous 14 years, I'd never once considered it. But for some reason, which I still do not understand today, I decided to contact the authorities to find out what had happened to the rapist. He had been given a 25-year prison sentence. So I contacted them and they advised me that he was coming up for parole on the day after I arrived home in South Africa. And in addition to that, the law had just changed, allowing what they call victims of crime to attend parole hearings. I just had to go. There was no reason not to go. It was just too much of a coincidence. Friends and family advised me not to go, but I had to go. And then one friend said to me, "Well, if you're going, you must forgive." And I said, I'm never going to forgive, don't be silly. But he got me thinking about it, and I researched, went to Mr. Google and I researched forgiveness. I wrote this long, involved speech just in case. And I went to the prison. I was the first person in South Africa to attend one of these new hearings, and they weren't quite sure how to deal with me. So it was all a bit novel for everybody. And I had to go into the prison, which was quite eerie. You walk in through all these gates, metal gates clanging shut behind you, and all these overall orange overalled prisoners waiting for their parole hearings or therapy treatments, whatever. You had to walk through all these men. And then I entered like a boardroom, I suppose, and there were 8 men sitting around the table. They called in the prisoner. They went through all the formalities and procedures, discussed his case and how he had progressed or lack of progression while he had been in prison. And then they asked me if I had anything to say. So I said yes. And I pulled out my speech, started reading it, realized as I was reading it that it was too academic. It was, even I didn't really understand it. And and he only had a grade 6 education, and English was not his first language. So I thought, oh, he's not going to understand this. So I read it and then I put it down and I just looked him in the eyes and I said to him, I compassionately and completely forgive you, and I hand back the responsibility to you, and I take back my power. And so it was quite remarkable because the authorities said they would let me know in 7 days if he got parole or not. And it was just amazing. I just said, no, I don't want to know. I don't need to know. Because what had happened, that bond that had kept me tied to him, in that forgiveness, I completely broke that bond. So forgiveness is not about condoning what the person did or accepting what the person did or even expecting an apology from the person. Forgiveness is for you, and it's breaking that tie that's keeping you tied to those emotions. And it's quite incredible because after that, not once have I been triggered. Everyone talks about being triggered after a major trauma. Not once have I been triggered. So freedom is so forgiveness really, really sets you free.
Oh my goodness. Now, like when you're talking about forgiveness and explaining your situation, I can only imagine like how you felt throughout the years, um, just holding on to that and then finally able to release that. And so I kind of want to circle back into like how this relates to our topic for this show, which is like walking to your power through self-love, through self-worth, and through authenticity. Can you share a little bit about your experience with those words in particular, how that relates to you and how that relates to what you teach through forgiveness?
No, it's when you've experienced any kind of major trauma or adversity or challenge, it doesn't matter. It could be a car accident, it could be a divorce, the loss of a job. Uh, you become a victim, and you have all these negative thoughts and emotions. And it's so important that you realize that those emotions are there for a reason, and you need to deal with those emotions, and you need to express them, and you need to let them go. So that's where the self-love comes in. And you need to say, okay, I hate that man. And you can rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. I was filled with rage when this first happened to me, and I wanted to change the world, and I became this activist running around petitioning and lobbying and leading marches. I was filled with rage, and that was a 12 out of a 10. And then by working through the process of forgiving, and well, not even the forgiving, just working through the process of self-love, it's about saying, well, I don't want to feel that rage anymore. Let's just be angry and bring it down a couple of notches. And then from there, you bring it down even further to just annoyance. And then you can move to turning that into a positive emotion. And you can say, okay, so how do I want to feel? I never want to love this person. but I need to accept them or to understand them. And then you envision that outcome. You create through visualization. Everyone does visualization for things that they want for the home and the job and the partner, but you can do it with your emotions as well. How do I want to feel in myself? How do I want to love myself? How can I be me and really be what I want to be? I want to be happy. What does happy look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? So it's getting those pictures in your head, those feelings, having an affirmation. I'm happy, if that's what you want, but be more creative in your expression of that. I've actually got an affirmation that I have used as my alarm clock, and every morning I wake up to my affirmation, and it just reinforces and helps you focus on who you are and who you want to be and who you're going to be.
That's powerful. I always think back to like when, we as people, we do develop traumas over time. It may not be as severe as rape, but I always relate it back to like anything that affects your well being and your inner safety is considered trauma. And sometimes, we're very unaware that we hold on to things and it affects our well-being in our future endeavors, whatever that may look like, whether it's being in another relationship, whether it's pursuing a better position in your career, whether it's the well-being of your health and saying like I deserve to be healthy and happy, like the mental aspect of that too. And so when we hold on to these burdens and this resentment or this fear, it kind of prevents us from moving forward in life. So what you share is so powerful, because I do see that like in my own personal journey with with oh, excuse me, with my own like parents and the emotional trauma that I've experienced when I was younger, feeling unloved, feeling unworthy, and how that affected the progression of my career and my life. I always said, like, I don't understand. I'm doing everything right. And yet I held this like deep, deep resentment as to like why everything didn't work out for me was tied to, I'm just going to blame it on the person who hurt me and saying, it's not my fault that I'm not getting these results in life. It's my mom's fault for not raising me correctly, for not loving me, for all these things. And then I realized, like, it's not anyone's fault. Like, you get to decide your future, you get to move forward, and you get to create whatever you want your life to be and taking responsibility. And that's where, like, the power comes back. When you describe your situation, you said, I take my power back and I give that responsibility back to you. And that was like, oh my God, that opened a new window for me because I always thought of it as more of like, I just control my own actions, right? And whatever they're going through, that's that's their personal journey. But giving that responsibility back and taking your power back, it's something like just aligned with me right there.
It's so important. You know what you were saying, you said it's the way I was brought up, it's the way my mother treated me. It's so important right at the beginning. The first step you need to take is you need to separate the incident from the emotions. The incident happened. You had that accident. Your mother didn't raise you properly. I was raped. Whatever it was, it happened. I was attacked, I was raped, I was left for dead. It happened. I cannot change that, but I can change how I react to that. And that's so important. So the first step is just to separate those two and say they are not the same thing. The one is the occurrence, the incident, it cannot be changed. The other is your feelings, and that can change. Even though it won't change immediately, the minute you separate it, you're already on your first step to recovery. And so for me, that's the most important. Acknowledge what happened, separate it from your feelings and your emotions. Then let's deal with the emotions. Because you don't forget. You know, people say forgive and forget. That's nonsense. You never forget. And and I was often triggered. I would, he came up from behind. First I heard of him, he was actually behind me with his hand around my throat. So if I ever sat, I would never sit with my back to a door, because if somebody came up behind me, I would jump. I would get such a fright. Now, today, somebody can come up behind me and it's not a problem, because I've totally broken that connection of my emotion to the incident. And that happens through the process, not only of forgiving, but just working through those emotions.
Thank you for sharing that. The emotions is such a powerful aspect in our life. When you talk about emotions and then you talk about like um, also like resilience, grit, and growth mindset, can you share a little bit more about especially the growth mindset after? Because sometimes I know like we get so stuck in that I'm a victim and I'm surviving, transitioning into, okay, now that I've forgiven, like what can I do to propel myself forward, like actually move forward?
So, how I see it is, you first become that victim, and then you use resilience to become a survivor. So, resilience is, it's, people say it's bouncing back, but you never ever quite get back to where you were before. But it's about getting back to some kind of a normality. So you use resilience, which is your strength and your courage and your creativity, to find ways to make sense of what happened, to deal with what happened, to have discussions, to negotiate, to just make sense of the whole thing. And that is what resilience is. It's coping with the situation so that it makes sense. That's what it is to me. So then you become a survivor, but a survivor is still a struggle mode, because you're still making sense of what is this whole thing is about. So the next phase is grit. And grit is forging forward into a new reality. So you set in your aspirations and your goals and your dreams, and you put in actions in place, and you forging forward with passion and perseverance and persistence, and you go for whatever it is you're after, and you reach some level of success and you become empowered. And that is when you become a thriver. And it's so important to know that when you're in victim and survivor mode, you can't really forgive, because you're still dealing with what happened and you're not ready to forgive. So I never say to people they must forgive, because if they're in the early stages, you can't. When you're so filled with hate or fear or shame or guilt, whatever it is you're feeling, there's no way you can forgive, not genuinely. You can say, "Ah, let it go," but that's not genuinely forgiving. So when you're in thriver mode, that's when you start getting, sometimes called post-traumatic growth, but you get your growth mindset, and you start saying, okay, so what have I learned? How have I grown? How have I developed? What has this done for me? How has this changed me? And it helps you become totally aware of who you are now versus who you were before the incident. And that's, again, it helps with your self-love and your authenticity, because you really discover who you are, the new you. You
Yeah.
still carry some of the old you with you, but you've got a whole bunch of new stuff. And then some of us turn that into a benefit mindset, where we say, okay, let's use that experience now to help other people who are going through similar experiences. And it's at this point that you can start the forgiveness process. And then there's two aspects of forgiveness, because you have to forgive yourself as well. I have to forgive myself for working late that night. I had to forgive myself um, for hating so much. What a terrible emotion to carry. You
Um,
need to forgive that. I drank too much to drown my sorrows. I had to forgive myself for that. I didn't know how to fight. I fought the man, with everything I had, but I didn't know how to fight. So I had this, oh, if only I had known how to fight, it wouldn't have happened. But I didn't know how to fight. So you got to forgive yourself, first of all, for not knowing how to fight, and secondly, for feeling bad that you didn't know how to fight. So that self-forgiveness process is also extremely important, to let go of those negative feelings that you're carrying with you. And then you move on to forgiving the perpetrator.
Wow. I'm taking a moment to just absorb the information that you gave because it's so important to understand like where you are in the journey and knowing that like it does take time to get there, because oftentimes like when we experience negative emotions we do want to just like I just want to get out of it, like I just want to be out of the situation that I just experienced. I don't want to think about it, and we kind of like just shove it in the back of our minds and sometimes resorting to coping mechanisms such as alcohol or drugs or um, for me, I'm just like, I don't want to think about it. I'm just going to run away from the situation and watch Netflix and play and do all these things to kind of like just hide those emotions and realizing that does nothing for me. So, um, are there certain techniques or are there certain processes that you recommend for someone who is going through a traumatic experience and going through something difficult in life to help them in that coping process so they can shift into a more empowered state of being?
Very important to write and speak. So you can write a journal, you can draw pictures, but just jot down, have a mind map. It doesn't matter. Just write your feelings, write your thinking. It doesn't matter if you ever read it again, although it can be very therapeutic to read it again. Maybe you want to, as I did, turn it into a book. You can write blogs with it, but you don't have to share it with anybody. Writing, by putting it out there, you're getting it out of yourself, and when you move it out of yourself, it's already a release, and you start feeling better. The other thing is, if you're writing down your emotions and the intensity of your emotions, as you progress and start healing, it's fantastic to look back and say, wow, look how I've looked. I thought I wasn't better, but look how better I am than I was 2 weeks ago or whatever it was. And so it's very, very therapeutic to write it down. It makes you think about it. You can express it. And then to speak it as well. And you can speak to a therapist, to a friend, to your reflection in the mirror, to a dog or a cat. But speaking it again, it helps you express it, releases it. The universe takes some of that energy and it helps you heal much quicker. Those are my first two steps that I say start immediately.
I love that you mentioned the word energy too. Like, that's something that I've really connected with recently. How humans, we're all energetic beings. And so, like, we emit energy into the field. So, like, if we are in a victim mode or scarcity mindset, our frequency is a lot lower. And so, our energy is kind of like you'll feel lethargic. You'll feel like you don't want to do anything. And so, when you say like releasing that energy, letting that go, it feels like a wave of release. Like I'm no longer carrying that anymore, and it allows your energy to expand little by little, like okay, today I actually feel good, let's go for a walk, um, and creating that inner safe space. So that's what I'm seeing. um,
No, but it's true. We can witness somebody else's bad situation, and the body doesn't know that it's not you that's going through that, and you react. So but you really just dissipating, sharing that negativity with the universe, and so it becomes less and less
mm,
um, about you.
wow, that makes sense. That does make a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. And then the main topic is like alignment, alignment in life, alignment with career. What does alignment mean for you?
Yeah, I can go right back to when I was a little girl. Um, my friends wanted to play Dolly Dolly, and housey, housey, and I didn't want to play with them. I wanted to play school teacher. So nobody wanted to play with me because nobody wanted to play school teacher. And then when I got a little bit older, I wanted to be an actress, and was never very good, but I wanted to be an actress. And everyone said to me, I talk too much. And if you look back at my life and you look at where I am now, all of those things were in me. I wanted to teach. I wanted to act. I wanted to speak. And that's what I do today. I teach, I act, I speak. Because that's what speaking is, and teaching it's acting to a large degree. And yeah, so it's about finding your true talent and then aligning yourself with that. And I had some of it because I started doing training probably in my 40s. Okay. So I started realizing some of what I was meant to do in my 40s. But it was then aimed at the corporate space. I was very much into training leaders and management and that kind of thing. And it was only in 2014, remember, I was raped in 1996. In 2014, I was at a conference in Thailand, and there were 300 people at this conference. And somebody on the stage said, "Who has a great audacious goal or dream?" And I wasn't very, I was quite quiet on this conference. I don't think I spoke to many people. And I just jumped up and I said, I've got something. And I said, I want to stop sexual abuse. And everybody stood up and applauded. And I was all motivated. Yes, I'm going to do this thing. But I went back to work. and and so the intention was there. You know, when I was first raped and I became an activist, the intention was there. And then life took over. And then in 2014, I stated that intention publicly, what I wanted. And then life took over again. And it was only life forced me to align. I was 64, and the government where I was working didn't want to renew my work visa because of my age. So I had to come back to South Africa. And I thought, well, do I go back into the corporate world, or do I now finally do what I was meant to do? So finally, after all 26 years or whatever, I'm finally aligned with my true calling.
Wow. What was like the biggest obstacle for you to, I guess, pursue, like every your alignment, your purpose, your true calling?
I think because I was comfortable, I was earning good money, I was enjoying my life. Why change it? You know, we they say you change through pain or pleasure. I changed through pain because I had to start again at age 64. So the biggest obstacle was my life was too good.
Wow. Did you ever, I mean, you mentioned that your life was already good, like you were comfortable. Did you ever feel that inkling, like deep inside you, that you wanted to still pursue um, this dream of yours that you had, like maybe a slight regret that if you didn't do it, like you would
Quite a lot
regret?
of regrets, but regret is a useless emotion. But you know, I wanted to publish my book the day I was attacked. I thought, because remember it happened so long ago, people didn't talk about rape in polite circles, and so the fact that it happened to me was, what, this shouldn't happen. You didn't know anybody, you'd never heard of anybody who got raped. And so I wanted to write a book and let people know that this is what's happening. So from day one, I wanted to write a book. And then I didn't know how to end the book. It went on and on and on. And then in 2014, in 2009, when I forgave the rapist, I thought, okay, here's an ending to the book. But in the meantime, Me Too happened. And so suddenly there was this plethora of books and people and talks, and suddenly it was in the news. And then I thought, no, if I publish my book now, I'm going to be a real Me Too. And so I just thought, what's the point? I'm just going to get me another book lost in the in this whole mess of Me Too. And so I put it aside. And as I said, it was only the pain of having to start over again that got me to pick up my book and finish it and publish it and start doing what I'm doing now.
Wow. I
So
can
yes,
relate.
I should have started it 20 something years ago.
I mean, I find relatability in your story though, because like when it comes to making a change in your life through pain or pleasure, I feel like mine was definitely driven through pain as well. Like it was the pain of not um, being happy with where I am, or like the pain of loss, like a loss in relationship. And it was just like, okay, there something needs to change. And I find that like the your your life, it was being lived in the moment. Like you were content, you were happy, you lived in the moment. And I think that's something that sometimes like we are so driven by material um, wants, like, oh, I want more, I want more, I want more. And that wanting drives us forward. But from your, your story, you were able to move on through life and remain at a very comfortable level. That kind of blows me away because for my youth, like career wise and everything else, it's like, oh, I need more. I need more. Like I'm not happy with where I am. And so now I'm curious as to like how you define, comfortable. Like how did you define comfortable?
I think it also comes with age and experience, that wisdom that I was talking about. Because when I was young, my first career was marketing, and I was never happy with where I was at. I was always climbing that corporate ladder, always wanted the next promotion. So no, I also strived for more, and it only came after. Um, because when after I was raped and then I lost the business and I went into debt, I suddenly realized what it's like to have nothing. And so it was, every little bit after that is actually quite wonderful after having nothing. And then when I was working in the Middle East, it was fabulous because I got to travel, and I had this whole adventurous life, and I just spent my time traveling. I traveled to 3 or 4 countries a year, and that was my pleasure. And so it wasn't about money, it was about experiencing new cultures and meeting new people, and that just gave me the pleasure at that time, and I miss that now very much so. So what was the question?
I guess like what defined comfortable for you? Because I think a lot of people, we find ourselves in dissatisfied situations, which forces us to change because we're never satisfied. So like establishing that inner balance and that the definition of, okay, I'm not doing this for external reasons. I'm just doing this to be happy. You basically answered it. I mean, like you
But you
said,
know what comfortable for me is? It's a room with a comfortable bed, a comfortable chair, a good desk, a very good computer, and um, hot and cold running shower, a fantastic internet, and an opportunity to travel. And that is comfortable for me. I don't need the trappings. I got rid of everything that I've owned. That is what I own. I don't have anything else.
wow.
I don't need anything else. I'm 66. Why do I need stuff? I'd rather be out there. I'd rather be out there meeting people and finding new cultures and new foods and new experiences. I don't need things. Those things that I've mentioned is what I need. A good computer with good internet.
Those are definitely important in this day and age. Definitely. Thank you for sharing that, Lois. Thank you for being on here. And I know you have, something special for the audience who have participated today. Would you share that with us?
And I have two things that they can get. The one is just it's an ebook on Ignite Your Mojo. So how can you stay happy? And it's sort of like a checklist, I suppose, of all the different things you can do, so you can find the right things to do for you to keep you happy. And the other is a forgiveness checklist. So it's a 12-step guide on how to forgive. Because, whilst I say you can't forgive while you're in the early stages, I'm saying let's get out of those early stages quicker. It took me 14 years to get out of those stages. So I'm saying don't wait 14 years. Get beyond surviving, get to thriving in 2 years or 3 years. Don't wait so long. So the forgiveness guide checklist is a useful document.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Lois, for your generosity, for being here, for sharing your impactful story. And for everybody else that is watching, we are so excited to have you, and we cannot wait to see you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. And I want to say to everybody, fly free.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.